Emily Graslie is the Chief Curiosity Correspondent at the Field Museum. She's here to share a few words about what science means to her, and then lead us into our march down to the Field Museum and Museum Campus, where we will begin our expo. So let's please welcome to the stage, one more time, Emily Graslie.
This is the most incredible thing I've ever done in my life. So before I start babbling at you guys, we gotta do a selfie because I'm a millennial. Whew! There's so many good-looking faces out there. Thank you. Thank you all so much. I'm gonna try to be pretty quick with this. As was said, I'm Emily Graslie. I'm proud to be the Field Museum's Chief Curiosity Correspondent and the host and creator of an educational YouTube science channel called The Brain Scoop. Thank you. So there's a red button that says subscribe, so when we're done here, you can just, that'd be a big boost for my numbers, thank you. And today, I'm also proud to be your commencement speaker. That's right, you're graduating. So to the March for Science graduating class of 2017, congratulations on your tremendous achievements. Unfortunately, none of you will be receiving a physical diploma today because we had to spend about $10K on those porta potties. Thanks to Cards Against Humanity for sponsoring that endeavor. Heck yeah. It's true that pooping is expensive, but let's all be grateful to the scientific progress that let us understand bacteria and parasites, and that allowed us to improve our infrastructure for excrement. After all, modern sanitation is one of the greatest medical advancements of the last century. And I probably could have started off with a better example. It's just that, like, my boss and like 700 people from the Field Museum are here, and also my mom. Hi, Mom. Yeah, there she is. So I'm a little bit nervous. I hope you can bear with me. The last thing between me and you marching down Columbus on this fine day is this talk, but I appreciate your patience. I've waited about 7 years for this moment. I never had the grades to be valedictorian of my high school, and I skipped my college graduation to go camping instead. Yeah, camping! So when the March for Science in Chicago organizers asked if I'd want to be the keynote, I thought, here is my chance to give the inspirational commencement speech I never knew I wanted to do before now. After all, in a way, like I said, this is a graduation ceremony. It's the preface of a new book. In spite of what I read in the news and online every day, that the world is doomed and our planet is turning into a dumpster fire, I can't help but be hopeful for the future if we put in the work, energy, and time needed to face the challenges ahead. I long to celebrate the incredible unlikeliness of our very existence and to marvel at the truly extraordinary circumstances which came together over millions and billions of years, culminating in this very moment now. It's hard to not be hopeful when I think about how our common ancestors survived 5 mass extinction events on this planet already. And many of you already know that, or at least can appreciate the awesomeness of that statement, which is maybe why you're here. But I'm here because I hope you're hopeful too. The March for Science is an opportunity to reflect on those who have come before us, on the developments we humans have achieved not only in the last few years, but hundreds and thousands. This is not merely a party to celebrate and pat ourselves on the back for characteristics as truth seekers and fact checkers. This march is a chance to also acknowledge our pitfalls, our historic and persistent challenges, and our shortcomings as scientists and as supporters of scientific endeavors and progress, because we are graduating onto the next phase and the next chapter of our story. This is but a new beginning. And part of what I want you to do today is take the ideas and messages from this event and share them with the people who you know who did not want to be here today. That's like step number 1. All right, check. Undoubtedly, there are a great number of you in the audience wondering, who is this wackadoo, and why didn't you get a real scientist up there to say something more, I don't know, academic sounding? To which I would say, if this talk isn't your speed, then I look forward to reading your rebuttal. Part of the reason I was asked to talk today is because I showed up consistently, and I'm going to tell you a story about the importance of showing up. My life so far can be divided up into two eras, before science and after science. I studied art as an undergraduate at the University of Montana and I just painfully had to reread a diary I wrote when I was 17 in order to corroborate this evidence, that I thought art was the only thing I was good at. Grades and standardized test scores told me I was not exceptional at much else. In art school, everything is about you and your work and your individual mission statement, and to be honest, I found it really isolating at times. I forgot my spot on the page. This is the first time I've ever did this. But one day a friend took me to visit the Zoological Research Museum on campus where she worked in the preparation lab, and I got the chance to prepare a specimen myself, a mouse that had been collected for a research project studying the distribution of rodents in Montana. I'll save you the gooey details, but the final part of the preparation process involves writing your name on the specimen label as the preparator, mostly for accountability reasons. But that moment was one of the most gratifying in my life. It was like signing a piece of artwork. But more than that, I had made a contribution, even if it was tiny and seemingly inconsequential, to something much larger than myself. I had helped to create a small time capsule of data which would outlive me in that museum collection, along with tens of thousands of others. I made a very tiny dent in an increasing body of knowledge, and it felt electrifying. Thank you. Applause for dead mice, yes. Since I had a couple extra course credits and some free time that following semester, I continued to show up in that museum and to figure out how else I could participate to this thing that was bigger than me. And I felt a sense of ownership of the specimens in the collection I was volunteering to help manage. The more I learned about those specimens, the more I felt obligated to speak for them, especially when I saw a few others saying anything. I pointed a finger at the university's administration for not allocating appropriate funds or support for specimens that were spoiling in a basement room across campus, and I pointed that finger again when the collection sustained further damage. I was picking up dehydrated fish specimens from a shattered jar with a label that told me those organisms were collected in Montana in the late 1800s, and in that moment I realized I was holding the fragile and vulnerable parts of a now broken time machine. And that even if I wasn't the researcher to study them or to make new discoveries through their use, maybe my children would, or my grandchildren. And what sort of steward would I be of our planet if I didn't do everything within my individual power to ensure I could help manage some seemingly small, minute aspect of our collective knowledge? It wasn't about a few fish. It wasn't just about some dead fish. It was about the biologists who ventured out west to make some of the first collections in Montana, and the scientists who trained them, and the wealth of knowledge passed down through generations before. My anger was for the lost potential for that wealth of knowledge to grow because of inaction, or because it seemed too big of a problem to solve, or maybe not even worth the effort. It was about the principle of the matter, that this was a blatant disregard for our collective past, present, and future. Those specimens in that museum forever altered not only the course of my life, but how I view my world and my role within it. A dead mouse helped me understand what it means to meaningfully and collaboratively participate in community. The scientific community, the museum community, and with any number of future individuals or groups that would be curious about the rodents of Montana. I thought about the uses by the agricultural community or wildlife management groups who will need to use that data to track invasive rodent species that destroy crops. Pest-controlled groups who need data about prey population numbers to show how their pesticides are or are not impacting local wildlife. Medical researchers who can make links between some rodent species and the transmission of certain illnesses and who need to know how far or abundantly distributed those rodents are in order to mitigate outbreaks. Climate scientists using decades of aggregated data of these animals to map and see how rodents are moving to higher elevations as seasonal temperatures rise. And they do. Spoiler alert. Conservation communities wanting to advocate for a rare and unsung mouse found only in that area, or for a threatened or endangered species which relies on those rodents as their primary food source, and those creatures that would be further harmed should that rodent population suffer. And hardly any of this information can be known without deliberate surveys of our planet's plants and animals, through which we are discovering new species constantly. Science, curiosity, and the desire to find solutions to the myriad of problems we face as a global society is at the root of all of these endeavors. This type of work is carried out by scientific organizations all around the world, including the Field Museum, and Field Museum. And now I'm lucky enough to get to talk about the work of our great Chicago institution every day. But man, I'll tell you, it was really hard to get people to listen to me at first. Especially when I'm running around campus screaming my head off about how we need to save a bunch of dead fish and mice. I completely understand how that sounds like crazy talk. I had friends tell me it wasn't worth the stress and effort. I had others question the appropriateness of my actions, saying it wasn't my place to care for or worry about those objects, that it was someone else's responsibility. But the most important thing that I learned is that if I am aware of a problem that I can help fix, it is my responsibility, whether or not I take ownership of the issue. So I kept showing up. I showed up with my paints and my brushes. I showed up with my art school buddies. I showed up with a digital camera. I showed up with a blog and with every tool in my box. And then one day, someone else showed up with a videographer and a microphone, and conveniently, an audience of a few 100,000 people on YouTube. And as they say on Broadway, I did not throw away my shot. And that is why I'm here today, and part of the reason that the Field Museum is here today too. I've been showing up to talk about the importance of science in our daily lives for 7 years, and the Field Museum's got a pretty good track record too, about 125 years now. But for some of you out there, this might be your first time showing up and speaking out. I just hope it's not the last. My greatest hope for the March for Science is we see this as a new beginning and a commitment to keep showing up in the future. Marchers, you graduating class. Whether you are a professional trained and practicing scientist or a student, advocate, and supporter of these endeavors, familiarize yourself with the scientific institutions and organizations this great city has to offer. Participate in our local and regional programs, and if those programs don't exist, commit to creating them. Engage in citizen science projects. Curate an art show or a poetry jam about the impact science has had on your life. And talk to your children's classroom about the nature in your neighborhood. Help elevate the voice of scientists. Attend the next March for Science. Speak up for science. We are all members of the scientific community in one way or another. We're educators, artists, communicators, and writers, and passionate lifelong learners who have an obligation and a mission to help others understand and empathize with our beautiful and fragile world, and with my inability to say words good. And on that note, not the word note, the beauty note, for all of you out there, commit yourself to curiosity. Curiosity is a light that illuminates the beauty of our world and our cherished existence. I'm a firm believer that curiosity is the first step toward empathy. Ask questions of things you don't understand and seek answers. Commit yourself to the beauty and diversity of your neighborhood, and commit yourself to learning the name of whom you share your street and city with. Learn your neighbor's name, whether they're a person, a bird, a beetle, or a tree. Value them all. The freedom to pursue that knowledge is no longer an idle luxury. It is of the utmost import. To conclude, I've got two quotes. The first is from a great commencement speech delivered by Kermit the Frog. On behalf of frogs, fish, pigs, bear, and all of the other species who are lower than you on the food chain, thank you for dedicating your lives to saving our world and our home. And for all you Brain Scoop fans out there, it still has brains on it. And now, we march. Thank you.